right, so let's call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Batavia Public Library District for March 18, 2014. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call please.
Okay. McGuire Popick?
Here.
Blodgett?
Here.
No. Wait, yeah, okay. Deichman? Not here. Von Moonen, not here. Jakubowski?
Here.
Sullivan?
Here.
Schuster, here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Item 4 is comments from the audience. Seeing none, we'll proceed to item 5, the consent agenda, which today consists of minutes from February 18. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review that, even though they came a bit late.
Oh, I didn't see them, sorry.
Okay. We have expenditures from February 2014, and we have an action item on a change in telephone services. Would any trustee like to remove any of these items for a separate vote? Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent. Okay. Moved by Blodgett.
Second.
And second by Jakubowski. And let's do a roll call on that, please.
Sure. McGuire Popick?
Abstain.
Blodgett?
Aye.
Jakubowski?
Aye.
Sullivan?
Aye.
Schuster, aye.
Okay. Consent agenda is approved. Item 6 is approving tonight's agenda. Any additions or changes?
On the back, there needs the committee and official representative reports the foundation did meet this month.
Okay. All right, so let's, okay, so yeah, item 13E should be left on the agenda actually then. Okay. So do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Schuster and second by Blodgett. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, item 7 is board education. This is a, I guess, somewhat regular, maybe you'd call it irregular duty of our board to, in order to qualify for the per capita grant, we have to periodically review certain elements that the state, Secretary of State's office, I guess, provides to us. So, George, is there anything you'd like to share here?
Well, as I usually do, I created a chart that summarized all the core and supplementary standards, and there's really nothing leaped out at me in the review. Many of these items in the course, in fact, all the items in the core standards have appeared on previous standards reviews, so there was nothing new there. We did add, I think since the last time we did this, the board had adopted that revision to the meeting room policy, so that's reflected in this document. But otherwise, there was nothing particularly new. We've not done the collection management and resource sharing standards in the past. There is an anomaly, actually, I guess I should say, between one of the standards is that we should evaluate our budget categories, materials and personnel, using Illinois Public Library Annual Report statewide percentages analysis, which is not published anywhere. I submitted a query to the Illinois State Library, to the person who is my contact for the per capita grant, and she forwarded that to another person with the Illinois State Library who has not yet followed up with me. So the anomaly is the supplementary standard number 1 states a flat 12%, which is what we've always used, because that was the old standard in the original standards book. So that's the person at the State Library was interested to have me report that there were 2 different standards for the same thing in here. So we've been using 12% in our budget for many years, and it works well for us, so we probably will continue to use that. Since we haven't done this one before, the supplementary number 7 on page 5, there were a variety of different formats we've never reported on before, and so we don't have many things in Braille and many things that are in the category of signed DVDs that use American Sign Language, but we have a few, so
Okay.
I've reported on all those odds and ends in here. So, in other words, we're doing very well.
What about the, where it says no policy? Is it required that we have a policy and do we need to address those?
We're not required to have a policy. Some years ago, the board, for the reference policy, the standards recommend a variety of different kinds of policies, and they've listed them in the standards book. The reference policies, our board at one point decided to just simply endorse guidelines for reference service rather than adopt a formal policy. And patrons with disabilities, we do serve them. We don't have a specific policy that mandates that we serve them.
Well, it's looking at specifically like access to materials and service to oh, you got the disability one, but the access to materials.
Yeah, there's 3 we don't actually have a formal policy for. And I'm not sure exactly, I've never seen samples of those kinds of policies. We do have very good access to our materials. The loan periods are generous. We have a good, well-weeded, active collection. We participate in statewide reciprocal borrowing. We participate in interlibrary loans. So, as I say, we could have a policy that says we should do that or we shall do that, but we actually have always done that. So, and we're not mandated to have those kind of policies. Those are just Appendix M in the book suggests various topics that, well, they say topics recommended for use of the library policy, but I don't think, personally, I don't think we actually need those particular policies, but...
Okay, and then the other question I had really quick was the policy on material selection, which was created in 2004, and is that pretty much up to date with all the digital material that we provide?
It is. We review that periodically, and let's see, where the...
I'm sorry, page 4.
Yes, I'm going to the top there.
Number 2.
Yep.
Yeah, it was adopted in 04. We did update it with a policy on links to other websites in 09. Since then, at least one time I've asked Joanne and Stacy to suggest any changes, which there weren't. But this, when we started the new collection for video games, we did in fact, as I recall, both of you prepared collection guidelines for those, which this is not a policy that was actually adopted by the board. Material selection was adopted by the board with the collection development plan. And there's 2 separate things. Material selection policy is the overarching policy that's board approved that presents the guidelines toward how we approach it. The collection development plan was developed by the staff, and in the collection development plan there is in fact for want of a better word, a section or a chapter for every format that, in every collection that we own. So when we add a new collection, like we added the video games, U-Service, the Digital Service developed a new section for those for the collection development plan. But the policy on material selection is very straightforward, broad guidelines, talks about if there are any complaints about the collection, about how we respond to it. So one is sort of a policy and one is sort of a procedure,
Okay.
I guess.
All right, thank you. That's all.
Okay. Good question. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on this issue? All right. So, moving on to item 8, which is the financial reports. We had a updated working budget document in our packet. Joy, anything to enlighten us on there?
No, we did get our
our numbers for our tax numbers for next year, just yesterday.
Okay.
So I'm going to be, George and I will meet and make sure everything's okay to verify to send that back. There's not a whole lot we can change, but, and then I'm working actively on trying to put a cash flow analysis together for the next 3 to 5 years, considering some of our capital projects that we have to deal with, and to see what we'll have. Other than that, everything is, our snow removal bills, I think have screeched to a halt, thank goodness, because you'll see in February, a lot of money was spent on that.
Do those come out of the maintenance fund?
They do.
Okay.
They do.
Yeah, see, we're over budget there.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
And probably the biggest reason we're over budget in the maintenance fund for this fiscal year is when we redesigned the entryway on First Street to make the turn-in to our parking lot more agreeable to cars. We put that whole project in that maintenance fund. So we had anticipated that we'd probably, have a deficit in there, but we didn't want to take that money out of special reserve because we knew that we had other projects coming down the pipeline. So that's probably the biggest reason.
Okay. All right.
And you may have accounted for this in your projected budget, is that the city of Batavia just raised the electric rates.
We haven't done a detailed line-by-line budget for our 14-15 fiscal year, but that will be incorporated into that. When we do that, we usually present that to the Finance Committee in May.
Okay.
Because we first have to get our tax numbers in, which we did, and then we have to wait for our insurance renewal, which comes in somewhere about May. And so there's several pieces of the puzzle before we can get the final numbers done.
Okay. Thank you, Joy. And, okay, so item 9 is the President's report. Two things that I have for this evening. One being Mayor Schilke invited George and I, as well as representatives from the other local governments here in Batavia, being the Park District and School District and Township. Was that everybody? Essentially an update about some ongoing developments within the city of Batavia. So I think the news from our perspective was good, and that there continues to be growth and development within our district, so that can only bode well for us in the future. I didn't really see any negative news. George and I talked afterwards about that. So I was really pleased how active the city and Scott on staff was on, really promoting development and, trying to match up prospective businesses and residential developers with open parcels or what have you. So definitely good news, and Mayor Schilke expressed that he'd like to do this regularly in the months and years ahead, so that's also good news. So we'll keep those lines of communication open, and hopefully if any trustee has anything to add to those discussions, please let George or I know, and we can share that at our next gathering. And then I know this week is kind of the culmination of One Book, One Batavia, so I'm sure everyone's looking forward to Thursday's big finale, and should be a good event. We'll look forward to probably hearing more about that and with the reports coming up. So that's it for my perspective. Item 10 is good news or comments from the board. Does anybody have anything to share this evening? Okay. All right, item 11 is correspondence and communication.
There's just one item, but it's in the packet.
Okay, all right. And then item 12, directors and librarians report. Again, George and staff provided some reports in our packet this month. George, anything to highlight here?
I think the key thing is I presented some preliminary report on source of funds. The Finance Committee has started to discuss different approaches to funding our capital maintenance and improvement projects. And Joy's working on a 5-year cash flow analysis, as she mentioned, and my half of the equation was to identify all the possible ways the library can raise money, essentially. And so I think I've got a relatively complete and comprehensive list in here as just as a starting point in that conversation. And it covers a wide range of possibilities that are allowed under the law. Everything from accumulation of funds, which in fact is how we've raised the money that we're using now, to increases in the annual tax, to special taxes, to things like our building equipment maintenance fund, which in fact we use nearly, if not 100% of for day-to-day operations. So that doesn't provide a huge source of revenue for us for special projects, although we do special projects out of that fund. And we're investigating other things through the city of Batavia. So a lot of things for the Finance Committee to talk about next meeting. That really is the highlight of my report, I think. Winter Library Club has ended, but I think we'll hear more from that from Joanne and Stacy.
Yeah, and George and I even talked earlier today a little bit about what I believe would fall under these TIP grants from the city. So we may be exploring that as a mechanism to help pay for some of our ongoing building exterior projects, assuming that is in fact allowed. So I guess that's more on that to come. Joanne, would you like to share anything about your report? Sure. Looks like you've got some visual aids here.
Yes, always.
We'd worry about her if she didn't.
First of all, Winter Library Club. Yes, it did end the end of February. We had a little bit of a decrease in numbers. We had 145 families participating, but still over 600 people participating. So it was just slightly reduced. However, those that did participate were much more active. So our active participation went up from 79% to 85%. So all in all, that was good. Our families that didn't participate, I think, enjoyed the library theme this year, the I Love Batavia Public Library, and some of the special activities and little rewards that they received. And I'm sending around 2 posters with pictures from Winter Library Club, some of our highlights. And on there, you'll see this family, a mom, grandma, and a little young lady. Her name is Alana, in a striped shirt, was one of our library VIP families, so they could get into a drawing to be a VIP family. So Allison gave them the family. Dad couldn't come, so Grandma came in the place of Dad, and they had behind the scenes tour of the library today, and they did some circulation functions. On one picture, I believe she's checking out or checking in books, and one picture she's in tech services, and they're showing her how they process books. And then George talked with the family and had cocoa and cookies with them this morning. So,
Tough job.
It's a tough job.
and they each got our I Heart Batavia Public Library t-shirts, each member of the family. So they were very thrilled, and the mom and grandma were as engrossed as Elena was about Alana, about the behind the scenes things of the library, and were very impressed with things at the library. And I guess Grandma and Mom both made comments on how the staff was very warm and welcoming to all of them as they came through, the backroom staff. So they really enjoyed that. Magazine.
Let me just mention
go ahead.
in meeting with them over the cocoa and cookies. the whole family was delightful. I also gave them copies of the windmill booklet, which they had not had, and which was more for the adults, but it was a family thing. And but Alana was really delightful, and although she's quite tall and doesn't look like it in the picture, but she's actually in preschool, and it really blew me. Yeah, this is her right there.
Oh, there, okay.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, yeah, okay.
She blew me away because she was a very bright little girl, and really seemed to really enjoy the tour, and the whole family, and they actually were quite interested in the windmill. The grandmother said when they travel around, they always look to see where the windmills they see were from. They always want to see whether they came from Batavia or not. So.
I guess they were very impressed in a lot of areas, and Alana, I understood, really enjoyed all the egghead pictures. Carrie has them posted in technical services. Egghead dressed with all the different hats on, and so she really enjoyed looking at
When we
those.
found that out, Michelle dug out, you may recall an egghead magnet we made a couple of years ago, and Michelle dug into the files and found a couple extra egghead magnets, so we gave Alana an egghead magnet, so it was a fun one.
Also in my report, I mentioned that our magazine collection has gone under a few changes recently. Basically, it's a look, and we're hoping to make the collection a little bit more appealing and accessible to our young patrons. We used to have the shelves that the most current issue was face out on a nice display shelf, but then to get to the ones that you could actually check out, you had to pick up that shelf and grab a box underneath and then rifle through that. Well, children weren't doing that, and when we would take school tours, we would find out that they didn't realize we even had magazines. So George actually saw these at ALA, and we brought them back and thought they looked great, and we had seen, Stacy and I had seen them as well, and I thought maybe this would be a great thing for our collection. So we've moved all of our current magazines into a box that looks like this. I can send it around if you'd like. The most current issue is in the front, but it is check-outable, so kids don't have to wait for months to get the most current issue. They can check it out just like any other issue. And these, we've taken the lift flap off the shelves, so now when you come down the stairs, you see our little bank of magazines right there, and it's double-sided, so there's another side to it. But the magazines are always very attractive, and the newest one's always in front, so it's a very visual thing for children to see. And staff have noticed a lot more people looking at the magazines and pulling magazines out. So we're hoping that the magazine collection actually circulates quite a bit, and we're hoping this will even help it circulate more. But it's very visually appealing.
There's different sizes, so the smaller, like digest-sized magazines has a slightly smaller box, and in your collection, that's probably about the biggest size there is. Maybe.
Right, and this is pretty much where the majority of them are in this size collection. But and it doesn't slide off the shelves. It's got little rubber feet, and so it should. But it's light enough that somebody could take it off the shelf and sit on the floor and page through. So.
Or bring it to a table. If they
Right. So we think that that's going to be a very nice addition to that, highlighting that collection. Middle School Mystery Night was this past Saturday. I'll just pass around some random pictures of that, and we had a great time. We had a great group of middle school students, and once again this year we had several high school students as volunteers who served as camp counselors or team leaders, and students had a great time at this event. Our middle school students who participated in the focus group, I understand all 10 of them showed up. They were all very excited to be there. And I understand from the interviewers from NIU that they were a great group of students. They had a lot of great ideas, and we were concerned that, will you get them to talk? And they said, oh yeah, we'll get them to talk. Well, I guess there wasn't a problem getting this group to talk. So we look forward to some really interesting ideas coming out of that group. And I do want to just mention for
the benefit of BATV and all of you that spring break is just around the corner, even though it doesn't feel like it. But it is the first week in April, which is a little different. Usually it's more the last full week in March, but for us it's the first full week in April, and we do have a lot of great activities planned. So, yeah, nothing to do. Well, I don't know if the grown-ups want to, but kids for sure come and to the library and participate in our spring break activities. Questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Stacy, welcome.
Thanks. As Joanne mentioned, Winter Library Club wrapped up. We had 66 adults and teens participating who read a total of 549 books in a month and a half. So those are some serious readers. Doug mentioned that One Book, One Batavia is wrapping up this week. We have had a wonderful season this year. Lee Blakely has put together a terrific lineup of programs, and the ones listed on your report: homemade natural cleaners, planting and planting a vegetable garden, raising chickens, beekeeping for beginners. Each drew a crowd of about 50 people plus. So those are wonderful numbers. When we talk about those numbers with other librarians at other places, they wonder how that happens. So a lot of things are going right in this community. A lot of people who are very engaged in the life of the community. So it's partly Batavia itself. We're looking forward to the grand finale day this Thursday. We have 2 events planned. Books Between Bites at 12 noon. Jennifer Downing, a Batavian who owns a cooking school here in town, who focuses on cooking with real ingredients, is going to be reviewing The Good Food Revolution by Will Allen, which is our One Book, One Batavia title. That's at 12 o'clock. And then at 7 o'clock in the evening this Thursday, Barbara Geiger is going to be presenting Green by Design, talking about efforts in Chicago and elsewhere, efforts in urban agriculture and renewing some city spaces to redesign them in a way that's more green. So we're looking forward to that event this Thursday evening.
Okay. Questions for Stacy? All right, thank you. Okay, item 13 is committee reports, and in Andrew's absence, would anyone like to report on the facilities committee?
Well,
Nancy?
I'll make a stab at it, although
Okay.
I feel it will be kind of, I'll probably be leaving out a lot here. We've been a very active committee, lots of discussion and things to consider, and then of course financial resources is impacted or impacts those things that need to be decided. We had previously decided to approve the I believe it was the design plans for the outside work that was to be done.
At the last board meeting, the board approved the bidding phase for
Yes.
that. And then the committee, the schematic design for the stairway arrived just right before the committee meeting, and so the committee discussed and signed off on that. The board had authorized, it actually authorized Trustee Deachman and I to do that, but since there was a committee meeting there, we turned it over to the committee to do that, and that was approved by the committee and has gone on to repair design.
Right, and then some concerns were raised, I believe it was at that committee meeting, about priorities given work that needs to be done on the outside as well as work that needs to be done on the inside. And so I'm not sure, George, you had sent around a memo to people asking for priorities, and I don't know if you've got feedback from everybody on that and where we are with that.
That went to the facilities committee.
Okay.
And the president is an ex officio member of that. And just today, when Andrew called in, not able to be here tonight, he provided some feedback then. But then, I think in summary, the feedback was to continue moving ahead as the board had approved last month. But Andrew suggested that when it comes time for reviewing bids in a month or two, he said that'd be a good opportunity to decide what things do we actually want to complete at that time if the board wants to make changes. So that was the last.
Thanks for filling in on all that.
No, I'm happy to help.
Okay.
I think that's about it,
It was
right?
a pretty active, involved meeting, I think. Is
Okay. So the status then is we're proceeding with that group of projects that we had initially planned to proceed with, and then there's a second set of projects that is not as far along in the design process, basically. Is that?
That's correct. The board has not yet authorized the facade projects to go to schematic design. The site work components projects have gone through schematic design and repair design and are heading toward the bidding phase, but the board had requested that the stairway be rolled into that, and so the schematic design has been completed for the stairway, and they're hard at work on the repair design, which is that more detailed with the plans and the specs, and so
Okay.
everything is proceeding apace, I guess, as they say.
Okay, thank you. And then Finance Committee, in Tom's absence, I guess I was at that committee meeting, basically kind of a spillover from Facilities Committee, if I remember correctly, in that we discussed financial implications of these two sets of projects that we're trying to proceed with. We have enough money to complete all of, that group we're nicknaming the site work projects, and if I recall, we don't have money identified fully for that second group of
The facade
projects,
piece.
facade piece. So some more, and Joy referenced that earlier in terms of trying to determine a long-term financial plan in order to get all of those upgrades to the building exterior complete. So I don't think, well, and I guess the telephone.
Telephone recommendation came out of that
Right,
committee.
so, and we already took action on that, so, okay. All right, and then no outreach committee meeting. The services committee, item 13D, we did meet. Our item of business was a follow-up discussion on the ongoing ebook discussion. One item to report from that discussion is that Stacy had added some content to our website which explains to visitors who are perhaps trying to download ebooks or investigate the ebook situation here at Batavia Library, to better explain why the collection of ebooks is perhaps more limited than some would like. So I think we appreciated that as at least some information for our customers, our residents, and we'll continue to look at ways to perhaps get around some of the restrictions that the ebook publishers continue to place on us and other libraries. So thank you, Stacy, for taking care of that. George, anything to add there?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. Okay, and as we noted, item 13E is part of tonight's agenda. So Kara, anything from the foundation?
Oh yeah, the foundation approved payment for babysitting for the course for the summer program, as well as the new Lyceum for next year. So they are getting money for that. But we need to raise some money, and in order to do that, we need a few more people on the board. So if you know anybody out there who'd like to help out with the foundation, we're going to be coming up with a fundraising activity shortly, hopefully. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Kara. Any questions? All right. Friends of the library. Francine, anything to report there?
Well, I want to apologize that I was sick at the last meeting in February, and the next meeting is next week. So, but I did attend the annual meeting at the library, and it was a great meeting. They had a speaker there who kind of relates to the whole theme that we've been doing with conservation and green. And the organization, I believe, is called Conservation at Home or something. I'm trying to come up with the name of it. But they are very willing to come out and help groups and individuals look at their space and come up with suggestions on how to deal with wet areas where they're not supposed to be wet areas, and to use the space and to help design it so that it's an eco-friendly and attractive to birds and hummingbirds and butterflies and so forth and so on. And I thought it would be a great idea if the plans are not already set for our landscaping here as part of our outdoor facade project, for us to look at this group and see if, what the cost is for them to come out and give us some advice about our containers and moving from trees to containers, because service berries are a tree that's very useful to the environment. Unfortunately, it may not work for us, so they may be able to come up with some other suggestions for us. So I recommend that we contact them and see what we put them in touch with our landscaping people.
I know that our landscape consultant has been, and BTC have been in discussions over different solutions, but nothing's written in stone until the board says it is.
Right. So I thought that they could look at the plans and look at some of our problem areas and make some suggestions that perhaps we have not even thought about.
Yeah, good thought. Okay. All right, George, maybe that can be an item for a future outreach committee, perhaps, or I'm not sure exactly where it fits, but
If it ties into the plans for site work, it probably is facilities.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
But
okay,
we've had some Mike Sprofka, the landscape consultant, has in the last couple of years produced plans for various parts of the property, including the plantings around the windmill and shrubbery, things like that. So all that probably could be looked at with an eye to attracting more fauna and to the agreeable fauna to the site.
okay.
No.
We have quite a bit of disagreeable fauna in the form of chipmunks and other things around here, so
Or was there anything?
they're cute. But
They're not cute.
I think of Chip and Dale,
Yeah.
but they do dig a lot of tunnels.
Right.
But butterflies and hummingbirds.
Right, he has ideas on how to kind of mitigate attracting critters that you don't want to attract and things like that, so.
And we actually have a good piece of property for a lot of that. In this spring and summer along Batavia Avenue, we have some wonderful flowers and other plantings there that really, and in around the reading garden, we have a lot of nice things. But there's other areas that, like, it's sort of a wild tangle of things right now around the windmill. Whatever the original plan was is not exactly there anymore. So I think there's some wild roses and other things in there. But I think we have opportunities on our property to do.
And I did give a pat on the back to the Friends of the Library members that work on the ABC garden.
Oh yeah.
So they were happy that I mentioned them. And George, do you have anything about the last Friends meeting?
They really were talking about the annual meeting, and they're talking about membership recruitment, for their organization and public relations activities. So, in a way, business as usual. Their book sales are doing very well still. We actually have added. They requested an additional couple dates. We did approve an additional date in August, not the first weekend, but the second weekend, so as not to conflict with the summer reading club, and they're excited about having another Saturday book sale date. So.
Okay.
Thank you, George.
Anything else on Friends? All right, and then item G, 13G, is a link report. George, anything there?
The link board is really beginning the process towards developing a long-range plan for link, both to look at ongoing funding issues. The board during the budget review raised the question, why are all the libraries kicking $2,000 on top of everything else, an extra $2,000 into a reserve fund? And I've brought that up to that board, and it looks like all the libraries are in agreement with Batavia that is probably an unnecessary contribution. We have actually very adequate reserves, and but broader issue in terms of future. How to anticipate future developments for Link, future changes in technology. Some of the things confronting libraries in Illinois are consortium mergers, consortium splitting apart. There's all kinds of things going on in the state now, and there's a wave of turnover in library directors in the suburban area, and quite a few have already taken place in the last 6 months or so, and that opens up some opportunities for libraries that are standalone, that may no longer want to be standalone libraries and may want to join a consortium. So the Link Board decided it was good to do a little planning, look at what the possibilities are, and begin to anticipate what our position should be towards that. So that process is just getting underway. Starting to receive proposals from various consultants to help in that process. So I'm not sure I want to be involved in two strategic plans simultaneously.
Right.
But I'm saying that facetiously, because I think it's a good thing for Link to be doing. I think it's a lot of pressure from the state library on how consortium. There was a proposal to make all the libraries in Illinois part of one large consortium, and actually the technology doesn't exist to do that currently with any success. But those kind of ideas are, they come out of left field once in a while, and I think it behooves our small 9-member consortium to have a good idea about where are we now, where do we think we should be, and if should we, what are the possibilities for merging with other consortia? What are the possibilities for adding new members for our consortia? That sort of thing. It should be exciting.
Okay. Karen, did you have a...
No, I was just thinking, I'll bring it up later.
Okay. All right, item 14 is future agenda items. Looking forward to April and the future. Any questions for George or comments on those? Okay. Looking forward to that community survey. Will that be?
Yeah.
I guess will we have actual results for that by the?
It's coming up. I got a message today that they've now completed, I think, 238 of the necessary 300 surveys, and so they're rapidly moving toward a conclusion. So
Okay.
I don't know exactly when that process will be completed, but there will be reporting that comes back to this board when it is complete. So.
Okay. All right.
They seem very pleased with the results they're getting, although they haven't begun the analysis process yet.
Okay.
And as you know, there were interviews and focus groups last week. So.
Right.
Thank you all for participating in that process. I hope everybody had an enjoyable time meeting with the consultants. We had 3 focus groups, one for middle school students that Joanne talked about, one for high school students. I'm not even sure what the final number was. It was 8 or 9 or 10. I forget how many showed up for that. And then we had 9 community participants in a focus group, a very eclectic mix of professions and ages and genders and ethnic groups. And I've heard back from a couple people that I know that participated that really enjoyed the process, enjoyed the opportunity to provide feedback to the library. So we're really, I think, doing all the things we should do to build up data for this planning process. So I'm excited about where this may lead us.
And George, just may I ask a question? How are they contacting the remaining 300, all of the...
It was by telephone.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole survey is by telephone, and they send out the way their procedure has been, they said there's a letter that comes out on our letterhead, basically, that's signed both by an NIU representative and me, that goes out in waves. So they send out, I don't even know how many they send in a wave, but it goes out in the community, then they follow up on those addresses that they have, telephone numbers for. And then they, as they get close to the end of that batch, because it takes, at the current time, I don't know how many calls it takes to get one completed interview, but it takes quite a few calls to get one completed interview. And so they send out the next wave and do the calling in the next wave. And
But
so,
the people that get called, they get a letter
yes,
prior to getting called?
they do.
Okay.
Yeah, ultimately, everyone who receives a call should have received a letter unless the letter went awry. And not everyone who gets a letter may get a call, but everyone who gets called should have gotten a letter, which basically says the library is doing this, working with NIU to accomplish this project, and please help us out.
Yeah, that's probably a good technique. I can see how that helped.
And so there are a few people there that there are a fair number, what I understand, of hang-ups. People that just care less. So there's been some misunderstandings. One family thought it was a solicitation, from NIU for fundraising or something. And so there's these.
Did they send us a check?
No.
Did they call you and complain?
No, I think we've got only 2 complaints. One that came to me and one that came to somebody else in the staff. Concerns over why was I selected, or why is the library doing this, and so they're really interested in more information than was provided in the letter. And so have a nice conversation with them.
I'm curious about something else. So many households are turning away from landlines and onto cell phones. Were we eliminating possibly a portion of the population?
No, because NIU has access to mobile telephone numbers.
Ooh.
They don't publish directories of these things, but unless you specifically requested that it be an unlisted, like they used to call it. There are no listings anymore, but an unlisted number for a cell phone or an unpublished number, there are ways to get these numbers.
And don't they, the surveyors would get like demographic quotas as well, right? To make sure they have certain number of men, certain number of women, young, old.
Well, and there's techniques,
income, right?
Yeah, there's techniques for getting at that. And that's why we have to have at least 300 completed to hit the right percentages, and because there's quite a good chunk of demographic questions. And hey, the call I got where the person was upset with the whole process was totally related to the demographic questions. I just was very uncomfortable. That actually, I guess, went through the whole survey and answered all the questions, but was very grumpy about some of the demographic questions, and you can sort of understand that. And it was concerned that like somehow his name was linked to all of this, and I assured him and he thought that was true because we had his telephone number. Well, we didn't have his telephone number, but the surveyors had the telephone number, and I said, then when all is said and done, your specific personal information is anonymous in the results on the survey, and but he was very concerned about that because we ask year of birth. We don't ask age, we ask for year of birth. There's a different way of getting at that. Broad income ranges, they've got several they just read off, so it's broad ranges, and levels of education, what is the highest grade or degree of achievement, things like that. And I think people are not always comfortable with some of those questions, but as I say, I've only fielded just that one call, and there was the one call about the confusion over whether it was a fundraising, and I think it was more of the husband felt that way, the wife ended up doing the survey, I think is what happened there. So they always ask to speak to the oldest male in the house first, because men are notoriously hard to get to complete the survey. So they always start off asking for a male. And a high percentage, like the gentleman who I was talking about, declined to participate in these things. So then they ask for the oldest, female in the house, and then they have some hierarchy they go through, which ends up resulting in what I think is sort of a magical way in the right percentages of all the answers. So
It's a wonder they weren't hung up on after the male refused.
he handed it off to he basically
He delegated.
Apparently he just handed the phone to his wife. Yeah.
I don't approve of this.
I think his comment was, it's NIU, you take care of this one or something. Which is sort of funny. But, so I think there's probably some good humor stories out there too. But generally, the feedback I've gotten personally from people that I know that have gotten called is generally their attitude is positive. I think they're interested in what the library is doing. Usually that's why they're talking to me if they know me. It's like, so what are you doing with all this? And so I explain what our the strategic planning process. It's just like a PR opportunity in a way, I guess.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and April 26th, which is the retreat day, is approaching like a runaway freight train. So we'll be having that retreat before you know it. So and that's the main day when all the data will be thrust upon us. But if there's an opportunity for a committee to get some of that in advance, we'll certainly do that too.
Okay. All right. Okay, so item 16, I guess, is a motion to adjourn.
Almost should adjourn.
A second. We'll
And
fight for
second
second.
by Francine. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.